Welcome back to Fear and Beer, a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. Join us as we venture year-round into the fog.
Make sure you give us a like and a follow on your podcast platform of choice. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube page where we upload every episode in its video format, and maybe a few other surprises as well.
Make sure you're following us on social media to keep up to date with our newest haunted content.
I'm Nick.
I'm Seamus.
I'm Jamie.
Well, would you look at that? I forgot to come up with a little YouTube clip after 2 weeks in a row of putting funny clips to start. I forgot again. I tried Googling, so I was like, what's a funny guessing quote? I don't know. We're going to wing this one. But today, we are going into our guess map. Now, this is something we started doing last year because at the time, in January of 2024, there was nothing to talk about. Now in January of 2025, we already have rumors and speculation and all this nonsense. So it kind of filled a void for us, so to speak. And it gave us something to sort of, I don't want to say kickstart speculation, but at least get people, get their heads moving, they get their brains moving and flowing and stuff like that. But this year, it kind of worked out a little bit differently because we already have some rumors. So I can say that maybe sort of influenced some of the things that were on here, whether we were going to put stuff on here or not. We'll kind of let you know as we go. But I think it's just a fun little project that we like to do. I think people look forward to this. And surprisingly enough, last year, we're gonna go into the map that we did last year as well, just to kind of review it, I guess, to see what happened, what didn't happen, and why we kind of thought that stuff. But that's what we're going to be going into. So we're presenting to you our HHN 34 guest map today. Jamie is absent. I gave her the cold that I had, so joke's on her. Now she's not making fun of me for being sick. Now she's stuck with it. But let's get into some beer, because I found this little beauty in the back of the fridge. The holy grail of beers, the old Shipyard Pumpkinhead. I figured if we're going to be talking about HHN, we might as well be, drinking along like we're at the park. So I'm going to crack this bad boy open and see if it still tastes all right. Yeah, still got the spice. Still got everything that's good. Gives me the essence of the gods. So let's dive in a little bit. And I know there has been some big rumors and stuff like that have come out since last week that we didn't discuss, but we'll save that for next week just in case we don't get more rumors to talk about. And we're going to strictly focus on these guest maps that we got. So let's dive into the map from last year and kind of review stuff, because we got 2 of them right, and they were originals. Those are the harder ones to get. We didn't get the IPs. But we started off, we have on our map, we had Slaughter Cinema Part 2, which I think Seamus announced that one for the map episode last year. And I think we just felt it was time. We sort of built this map, much like we built this one this year, sort of in the mindset of like, what could save them some money? What is some properties that they know the fans will be happy with, regardless of, how soon or whatever, just to save some money. So we had Slaughter Cinema Part 2 on there. Nailed it. Friday the 13th did not happen. I think we were sort of speculating based off of the Peacock series that is still happening, I guess. I don't know. I haven't really heard much of that. Have you heard anything about the Peacock show?
No, I haven't heard anything either.
Yeah, I don't know if it's dead in the lake or dead in the water, but we had to kind of throw some sort of classic on there, so that's why Friday the 13th landed on there, which is funny because we really had a 50-50 shot with that or Nightmare, and Nightmare was rumored for so long into the season. It was like,
right,
close but not really. But our third location, we got Five Nights at Freddy's. Obviously, that was a hot ticket item last year. It was Stranger Things season 4 all over again. The line in the sand was drawn Five Nights is not coming. Five Nights is coming. You're dumb. This is stupid. It was a whole debate, and we were dumb. But but the thought process was sound, right? We did have Blumhouse represented at the event last year, just not in that capacity. We had Holidays in Hell on there again, similar, I think, thought process that we tied in with Slaughter. It was like, okay, well, something cheap, something easy that can be done. Now we got a handful of holidays just in Slaughter Cinema. We had the Mardi Gras in there. We had Christmas in there. So wrong, but right, but wrong. We had Sweet Revenge on here. That was our second correct item. And again, along the lines of what's recent, what's still could save us some money and turn into a pretty cool house. And I believe we even called it the Major Sweets Candy Factory on this episode back in January. You can go back and listen to last year's episode and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was something along those lines. At number F, location F, we had Terrifier. This was just because we figured the third one would be coming out in December. We figured the fans would be hyped up. Maybe that will be something we talk about again this episode. We'll see. G, we had the Wizard of Oz on there, which again, I don't think we're too far off on. We sort of might. I feel like this is getting kicked around this year as well, and I think we might continue down that road.
It's probably an ongoing, not rumor, but an ongoing desire from a lot of people to see something along these lines. If not, obviously, specifically that movie, but in that ballpark.
Yeah.
Some sort of theming.
It's not undone. It hasn't. It's been done before, so it's not unprecedented for something along those lines to around HHN. And obviously, with the popularity of Wicked, it would be kind of tongue-in-cheek to poke fun at it a little bit. Location H, we had a Greek mythology original. We sort of were following the trend of dueling dragons. Obviously, it took place from a pre-existing ride. We didn't necessarily think this was going to be any sort of Poseidon's Fury house, but maybe something in that wheelhouse. And again, these three that we just mentioned, maybe they'll stick around. I don't know. We did have a very quiet guess. We had Silent Hill instead of Quiet Place.
Quiet Place.
So half credit.
So we were kind of close.
Yeah, half credit. And then, of course, we had Universal Monsters. On this one, we had Creature of the Black Lagoon and Frankenstein. Again, I'll give us like a quarter of a point. Obviously, no creature, but there was sort of Frankenstein. There was a dead Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's monster's better half. She was present. God, Pumpkinhead's so good. But yeah, overall, I mean, I think that guess map was pretty decent. It's kind of cool in retrospect to look back and see, where we were, why were we thinking this and stuff like that. So let's move along then. So Seamus, do you have the guess map in front of you that we've
I do.
Gone over? Yep. All right. So I'll kick us off, and then I think we can kind of rotate and then sort of I'll kind of give my reasoning. You can give your reasoning as why we sort of all collectively agreed on these properties. And let me tell you, we did throw an extra location on there because we do think that is coming. 1, 2, 4, 8, 10. Did I put 1, 2? Yeah, there's 11 on here.
Yeah, there's 11 on here.
So we settled on the 11. I didn't want to put 12, but maybe at the very end, remind me. I have this in my notes, but I might just blast past it. But me and you will each throw one more Hail Mary out there for like a potential 12th house. So during the course of this, just think of maybe if there's something else, either IP or original, that you sort of...
Well, looking at it now, we did miss something pretty big, but when we get to that point, I'll throw it out there.
Yeah, yep. And the reason being for that, are you talking about the recent rumor?
No, no,
Oh,
no, no.
okay. Okay. Now I'm interested. All right. So let's get into this. Not all of the rumors um, and speculation that have come out are on here because we didn't necessarily want that to influence ours because we want to realistically get this out there beforehand. So we'll kind of talk about those as we go, but some of these have sort of been either got us our brains working in one way, whether they meant to or not, and that's how we
Yeah.
ended up with this. So, starting at location A, right up front, where the Monstros was, that is where we are guessing we could potentially see the return of the Nightingales. And the Nightingales, obviously, we haven't seen them for a while. We saw them in Blood Pit at 29. We saw them at Blood Prey at 2011. And I think a couple of reasons why we decided on this, and we also called it Blood Steel. So, kind of playing with their Blood Pit and Blood Prey, I feel like the term blood goes before another word that sort of leads you down a path of what the rest of the house is going to be. And this one, obviously, from Spec Map 1, we saw that little bird, and that kind of got us going. It had the lotus flower. We're like, oh, Japanese original. We've sort of been talking about that for a while, but it makes sense. You could have the samurai warriors being preyed on by these nightingales, but this is really the spot I was going to put kind of one of three different properties. And the reason being I chose nightingales is because we have seen in the past a lot of recent sequels or recent returns. We had Slaughter Cinema come from 28 to 33. We had Major Sweets come back from 31 to 33. We had Yeti from 29 to 32. We had Vamp at 26, 28, and 32.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Dead Man's Pier come from 26 to 31. So like we're in that routine, I guess, of bringing back these sort of staple properties of HHN's creativity and giving them a zhuzh up. And I do think we are still kind of in the tail end of this epic budget HHN sort of conversation where it's like, okay, well, what can we dust off, present an original good story that hasn't been done yet, and not piss everybody off by just being like, oh, hey, it's another this house, it's another this house. And I think that these nightingales are one of those properties that people, I don't think anybody would say they're tired of yet, because it really has only been twice, and it's been a little bit. Now, I don't know if these will be any of your Hail Marys, but my mind, when I was trying to think of a concept of a HHN property they could return, it would have either been Nightingales, Seeds of Extinction, or a Body Collector's House. I really think we're going to get at least one of those three. The other two are not on this map, but I did think that those are sort of staples in HHN lore that they can go back to with a fresh story, and the fans would be happy. We landed on Nightingales because we also sort of wanted to tie some sort of Japanese lore in there, and that would be tough to do with Seeds or Body Collectors unless you did the whole Seeds extinction in Japan. But I think this makes sense because those characters do prey on the wounded warriors. So that's kind of the reasoning behind Nightingale's Blood Steel. But what would you like to add for Nightingales?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of exactly what what I'm hoping for. Obviously, if they do Nightingales again, it's nice because something like that you can kind of put in all different kinds of settings and make it work. It doesn't have to require a specific period of time or a specific place for it to work. It can be anywhere at any point in time, and you can make the story make sense. So I think I've been, hoping for something more of an Asian style house, Japanese, Chinese. I wanted to see something from either the Singapore park or from the Beijing park or whatever city it's in. But I wouldn't mind seeing something like samurai based. And like you said, I think that if the whole idea of the Nightingale story is that they prey upon wounded and dying soldiers of battle. Samurai were some of the most famous warriors in history. So I'd like to see them kind of represented in some way. So,
yeah, I like I said, I do think we're gonna see, and a couple of these properties on here that we have are sort of actually all of our originals besides I think two are sort of completely original, but we'll get to those when we get to those. So that is our first location. Seamus, you want to talk about location B?
yeah, and this is something that people have been talking about. So this might be the closest we've got on here to something that's like rumored, but it's The Last of Us Part 2 in B. It only makes sense that they bring in a sequel for this. They have been, rumored to have been talking about it. I mean, for as much as we weren't fans of it, there were a lot of people that liked the first one and I think would clamor for a second. So it only makes sense, especially with I would assume another season's coming out at some point.
Soon, I think it's
and I've been seeing ads for it on the first season again, so they must be ramping up to push the new season. The games have been relatively popular lately, at least from what I can tell. I mean, I do consume quite a bit of streamers, like gaming streamers, so like it seems that people are playing it again, so maybe they're just ramping up for the show, but it seems to be back in current pop culture. So it would only make sense to see them, dip into that well once more and kind of take advantage while the kettle is hot, I guess. But it's far. I mean, obviously, it would probably follow along the lines of the second game, the second show. Different story, same obviously world, but the story's obviously evolved a little bit. We're now focused on Ellie as like in her story. That is her name, right? Am I getting that wrong?
Yeah.
Ellie. Yeah. Okay. So I'm sure the house will probably follow that story itself as well. So it's not much to say about it, unfortunately, because I mean, we all know what The Last of Us is. We all experienced the first house. It'll be very much the same thing. We're not entirely wild about it being on here. At least I'm not, because I'm not really looking for more of the same. I say it every year. I want new things. I want new. At least new to me, anyways. Because I know people will be like, "Oh, you said you wanted scare us." A sequel to Slaughter Cinema and this, that, and the other. But it's like, I didn't get to see the first one, so it's new to me.
Correct.
But
it's all new for you, yeah.
I digress. I'm not wild about putting it on here, but I can understand why we did. Like, it's probably the closest one as of right now to being one of the houses.
And I really wish all these like rumors didn't start, because I think the 3 IPs on here that have already been rumored probably would have made their way on here regardless, because that's the stuff I look at when I made this last year, and when we do our like way too early predictions, I look at what's being released, what has been released, what's been popular, what's been at horror nights, and The Last of Us is popular. It was at horror nights, and it's releasing in April. Like, it would have probably made its way on this map, whether it was rumored or not. Just looking at IPs that have sort of come back, we had Ghostbusters return, we've had Insidious return, we've had Stranger Things return, Chainsaw, Halloween. The list does go on. These IPs do tend to repeat themselves. And especially if there's a second or third or fourth iteration, they typically already have that relationship built up. Who knows? Maybe that was part of the agreement to begin with, and they're like, "Hey, let's sign off for 2, or we'll tentatively do the second one as long as the first one's received well." And I think that would have led us to having this on the map regardless. So it kind of took the wind out of our sails a little bit, because that would have been cool if this was put out. If these rumors started coming out in a month from now or 2 weeks from now after we drop this. But if it happens, I guess you don't want to give us full credit, fine, but it would have happened anyways.
So we're going to take full credit anyways, so it doesn't matter.
Goddamn right. So location C, I'm going to move us along now. And this is where I'm going to talk about, again, a returning Halloween Horror Nights original. And it was one that we sort of mentioned on last year's, where we put Wizard of Oz. This is where I'm putting Scary Tales, You Shall Not Live. Now, Scary Tales, we haven't seen since 28. That was Deadly Ever After, and that had just a whole slew of characters in that. It wasn't necessarily one specific fairy tale, but we had like Wizard of Oz, Hansel and Gretel, Three Little Pigs, Rapunzel, Little Red Riding Hood, and I think the Three Bears, the Goldilocks and the Bear. So this is not like we mentioned. This isn't uncharted territories. We've done a Scary Tales style thing, and we've done it plenty of times too. It started off in 2001, Scary Tales, and that was actually the first ever House of the Year, which is kind of a cool little tidbit. And it was actually supposed to be called Terrorland, but obviously because 9/11, they changed the name to Scary Tales, and then they brought it back in 2002. So that way they could show what they were actually wanting to do before they had to alter it because of the 9/11. It made a comeback in 08 as a house, and then it made a comeback at 2015 as a scare zone. But I do think it's time that they dip back into this well, especially off of the popularity of Wicked. The code names, I don't think we had the code names last time when we did this, but I think we mentioned on our code name deep dive that a lot of people were leaning towards some sort of Wicked thing because the code name Poppy was what the Wicked Witch gave to the Dorothy to fall asleep. It's funny because the code name for Scary Tales Deadly Ever After was Poison, referring to the poison apple that the evil queen gave to Snow White. So it would be funny if they literally used the same reasoning behind code names, right? It's the object that the villain gives the protagonist to kind of put them under a spell, or so to speak. So there's a lot of things pointing towards that. Again, like I talked about with Nightingales, with all those HHN originals that sort of have been coming back and getting a zhuzh up. I think this falls in line with that. I think if they've been smart and save, if they're trying to still save budget, you keep set pieces from dragons, you keep set pieces from goblins, you sort of repurpose stuff here and there, and here you go, you got a new Scary Tales iteration. But that's kind of my reasoning behind Scary Tales. What did you have for?
I mean, I never. Again, I wasn't at 28, so I didn't do Scary Tales. I've never done anything, in that particular story or that particular original idea. So I don't really know a whole lot about it. But I do like the idea of taking fairy tales and kind of warping the story and warping them to your twisted, horror version. So I'm totally okay with that. I'm interested by the subtitle that was chosen. You Shall Not Live.
Yeah, I had to pull some. I wanted to put a little extra zhuzh on there, so I just took like a fairy tale line and just.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Like I think it sounds interesting. And they could go anywhere with this. I'm not 100% sold that they would do anything in relation to Wicked, just because that you're getting kind of into gray water there when it comes to like, how much can we use versus how much is infringing on the property, and so it's you got to be kind of careful with that.
I think is it a Universal movie?
Yeah, I don't know. It could be, but
it necessarily matters. But like, I get what you're saying. You don't want to kind of cause confusion or whatever.
Exactly. So I don't know. It might be Universal, but even if it is, it would be too. I think it would be too adjacent to the movie and the Broadway show, and I think people would get confused. But I can see them using other fairy tales that we haven't seen before. that
Rumpelstiltskin.
obviously aren't necessarily, related to other theme parks or anything like that in the area.
It is a Universal,
Is it a
which
Universal
also they
movie?
do have the Wicked store there too.
Oh, true. Oh, that's true. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with everything you said. I think that it's something that we've seen before where they bring a lot of things from previous houses and or scare zones back. And everything kind of rhymes with each other over as the years go on.
Yeah,
And houses tend to rhyme with previous houses and using different, you know, worlds, or maybe even bringing us back to the first Scary Tales house and saying we're going to do a sequel in a sort of way to this house. So
yeah, it is, when doing these maps, obviously we do pull a lot of like sequels or whatever, and obviously there are always kind of handfuls of completely brand new concepts. But you look at last year, Goblin's Feast, Museum, and Triplets of Terror. Those are the only three like straight up originals, because everything else was IP. You had the monsters, and then you had Major Suites, which was a sequel, and you had Slaughter Cinema 2, which was a sequel, and you had Monstros, which was a Hollywood. So like you really only had three fresh ideas last year. So like it's obviously a lot harder to call completely, fresh ideas and fresh originals, but we'll take our chances by kind of filtering it with whether it's sequels or returning franchises, I guess. So, do you want to jump into the next one?
yep. So this is
This is the shocker.
location D, and this is another IP that we're guessing on, and I think there may have been talks of this in the community. I don't know if there's been rumors or anything, but
No,
we do think that we might see The Conjuring, and we would like to see The Conjuring, so we put it on the map.
Hopeful thinking. It's our map, so we can do it.
Yeah, it's manifesting things is what this
Correct.
is. We're just going to manifest things into the ether. But The Conjuring would be really cool, because we've seen them obviously do things like Insidious, so they've been in that world before. So doing The Conjuring would be an interesting new avenue to explore. The thing about The Conjuring that I think they would have to really kind of like think about is how do they make that work as an actual like walk through attraction. It's very much a haunted house movie, so unlike Insidious where you have the red, like the lipstick demon, you've got actual characters that you can pull and use. Conjuring obviously has the family that's being tormented by the ghosts, but outside of a couple, I guess there were a couple ghosts in that movie, but a lot of it's obviously revolving around the family being haunted and Ed and Lorraine Warren coming in and doing their thing. So I think that it would be interesting to see them do The Conjuring. How they make that work would be totally up to them. I mean, they'd have to do some interesting ideas and takes on it. And obviously they did Hill House, so it's not like they haven't done that before. But at least with the Hill House, I think there were some pretty memorable scenes or set pieces that aren't necessarily in relation to physical monsters, but either way, I mean, it's obviously been done before, so I can see The Conjuring, working. And it would probably end up being something along the lines of Insidious this past year, where it's not just like the first Conjuring. They probably take a number of the movies in the series and they kind of come up with their own take on combining a lot of those into one house. But it'd be interesting to see kind of how they pull that off.
Yeah, I sort of tossed this idea out there with the reasoning behind it being that I think they want something to sort of recreate that Insidious style, like scary house. This location I was sort of leaving as a white whale IP because I do think we're going to get one that kind of comes out of left field and really does surprise us. I don't think in January of last year anybody was saying, yes, A Quiet Place is going to come. Like that was such a bizarre IP to grab. And I think The Conjuring is sort of going to be in that wheelhouse as well, where it's like they have the final movie coming out in September, Last Rites, so you can do sort of a culmination of the series before the final movie comes out. I don't know what the contract is with Six Flags. I don't know if it's exclusive. I don't know if it was a 1 year off, but it does show that Warner Brothers is willing to adapt that IP in a different form of medium. So I just do think that whether it's The Conjuring or not, I do think that this spot on the map is going to be a big white whale, scary IP. I just that I don't know why they haven't done it yet, and it is surprising, but I think it can fill that void of Insidious, where it can be that compilation. You can have Annabelle in there, you can have Valak, you could have the tall man, you can have that guy on the stilts. Bathsheba is involved. You can do some sort of stuff like that, and it can almost be like you're walking through Ed and Lorraine Warren's that like little safe room, like all that stuff got released or something like that. And that's how I would sort of spin the house, where all those cursed relics have kind of broken free, and it's our job or whatever to follow Ed and Lorraine as we try to recapture the spirits or whatever. But I think Conjuring and Insidious sort of go hand in hand. They're sort of franchises that have been ushering in this new wave of haunted house in the late 2000s, 2010s, and kind of carried us to current day films, and that sort of was the rejuvenation of the horror genre as a whole, I think.
Yeah, it kind of defined 2000s and 2010s horror as a genre. I mean, like it kind of represents that era. It's crazy to think talk about it as an era, but it's already 2025, so we've already we're already 15 years post 2010. So it's wild to think about, but there's definitely a specific period of time there that horror was kind of being rebuilt, kind of being brought to a new generation. So they had to come up with new ideas to bring people in and new takes on old ideas like haunted house movies and that sort of thing. And The Conjuring definitely was that, even if it was based on a supposedly true story. So you're right. I think that it goes hand in hand with Insidious. Would they do, back to back like that, kind of in the same pocket? But again, this is our map, so obviously we're not really thinking about that too hard. But
See,
yeah,
I'm thinking about that, but I think they do want to like capture lightning in a bottle or whatever that saying is twice. Like I think they want to recapture that magic.
Right.
Whether it works or not, that's completely up in the air. But I think they're like, oh, we can do like a super scary, like that's what people want.
Yeah.
So moving along to our next location, location E, another property that we had last year, making its way back. Terrifying.
On the map. On our map.
On the map. Yeah, on the map. Yes, correct. Sorry.
Just to clarify that, because I'm sure people are like, we didn't have this stuff. If we talk about
Terrifier. No, on our guest map last year, we had Terrifier, and I think maybe 2 years will be the max of me putting something back on the map, because I don't want to just keep putting it on there until it happens. But the fact that it was already rumored, we the way I talked about The Last of Us is kind of how I'm talking about Terrifier. This would have made it on the map regardless of the rumors because, well, it already did last year. So there's no reason for me to say I wouldn't have put it on there again, especially following the success of the third movie. I think this fills that slasher vibe for the event. I think this fills your gore and your blood house. And I just do think it's a hot commodity. I think the people want it. And I think the people running Horror Nights know they want it. And I think the people that make Terrifier, Damien Leone, know that everybody wants it. And this is like a home run for him, right? I know the movie came out in October. So by the time we go to Horror Nights, it's almost a year after. But I don't think that matters. But also, I think this is a good thing for Damien Leone, who is putting Terrifier 4 out, but probably not till, I would say, October 2026. So this sort of fills that 2-year gap. It's like, oh, you got Terrifier 3, then you got a Terrifier House, and then in next year, you get the 4th movie. So it kind of like works out perfectly. It keeps Terrifier in the headlines without making another movie. So I think that works out well for everybody. And I don't know. We thought it was going to work last year. It didn't get even kicked around as a rumor, and we're putting it on the map again, and it had already been kicked around as a rumor. So anything else you'd add for Terrifier as why you are you on board with? I mean, I know the rumors are already swirling.
Yeah, no, I'm on board for it. I'm still not convinced that it's going to be there, but I'm on board for having it. So obviously we would like to see it.
Yeah, the reasons are sound, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, you got to have one house has to fill that gore fiend, fan, like someone who goes and says, I just want to be grossed out. All right, well, this is the house to do that. Yeah. And they wouldn't have to like hold back or anything like that. They could do whatever they wanted. I'm sure Leone would totally give his blessing to do whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
And Art's such he's quickly becoming an iconic horror character. Even if it's more of a cult movie than it is a mainstream horror movie, he's definitely a recognizable character. And, obviously we can add him to the pantheon of slashers that we see every other year anyways. So yeah, I think it needs to happen. He needs to be included at some point. Shit, I want a Terrifier versus Jack House. Give me that. Clown versus clown. Last clown standing.
Mono e mono.
Just call it Terrifier last clown standing.
We'll take it. I'll take it. So you get a good one. You get to talk about the next one.
Oh, that's right. It's me again. I forgot. All right. Yeah, this is a great one. Said no Seamus ever. Well, at F, we have our obligatory Blumhouse house. And if you wouldn't believe it, we have Megan on here. Megan the doll. Yeah. Why would this happen? Well, she's been at the event 2 years in a row now. Obviously, Blumhouse is an existing partnership with Universal. They tend to have something Blumhouse related at every event. We had the Scare Zone this year. Did we have a house? I don't remember. I don't believe we did.
What house? A Megan
Blumhouse.
House?
Did we have a Blumhouse house?
Not last year, but we've had the black. No, so we had
Black Phone the year prior. Correct. Right.
And then we had the Scare Zone.
I'm getting my years mixed up, but yes, last year we had the Scare Zone. But she was there the year prior as like a dance mob, and then this year she was an actual like Scare Zone scare actor. She was up front, front and center for everybody to stop and videotape and take pictures with and make faces at and try to get her to dance with, and she wouldn't do it. But
that was me.
It only makes sense that we graduate from, dance show thing to Scare Zone to now an actual physical house. We have it just Blumhouse Megan. Will it be just Megan? I doubt it. If they do, I'm sure there will be something else involved in it. It'll probably be Megan and something like half and half, like they've done in the last couple of times they did a Blumhouse house. Mm-hmm. But I think it's time for her to get her own spotlight. Whether or not you like the movie, because I know I don't like the movie. I know Nick doesn't like the movie. I don't know if Jamie likes the movie. I can't remember if she liked it or not.
I think she hated it.
Yeah, so
yeah, I think she hates it.
Regardless of how we feel about it, it is a popular movie. People tend to like it, and they tend to like her character. Judging by the crowds of people that would just stop at the front of that Scare Zone this past October and September. she's definitely still a popular, character to have there. So why wouldn't they do a house for her? So it'll probably be some sort of amalgamation of the movie and their own original idea, their own original story based around her character. But yeah, Megan coming to the event as a house would only make sense,
Yeah,
whether
and
or not we
Megan,
want it to happen.
yeah, and Megan 2.0 comes out in June.
Oh, that's right. The movie comes out too. So
So
the second
again,
movie.
something that has sort of been kicked around as a rumor would have made its way on the map again, regardless. Just
Right.
looking at releases ahead of time, the connection we just mentioned, those are all things we've sort of been talking about. I start my way too early predictions list like a year in advance. Just I put stuff on the list, and
Well, just like they do.
yeah, exactly. So we'll see if that comes to fruition, but it makes sense as to why it would. So next location, I sort of talked myself into this one more when we were going over the flowers, and that would be Mardi Gras Murders, taken right from Slaughter Cinema 2 the year after. Now, this has happened. We had Slaughter Cinema in 28, and then the immediate year after, we had Yeti Terror of the Yukon, which was from the Swamp Yeti, is kind of in that world. So following the trend of pulling a Slaughter Cinema house or a Slaughter Cinema room the year following is what we think is going to continue. That led us down the rabbit hole of like, well, which ones, right? Is it going to be Hatchet and Chain? Because I think that has the most story to tell. Or is it going to be any of the other ones? I don't think half of them had a full story to tell if you really stretched it out. Just going down the list, I don't. Heavy Metal Hell in 3D could have a story, but that's kind of iffy. Killer Kringles, I guess. Night of the Undead Clowns, no. Blood and Chum, I don't think you can make a whole house out of it. Mummy Strippers, while very funny, again, I don't think
it would never be a house. Yeah.
I don't think you can do a house. And then the Zyborgs, I think
that one
it could,
the closest.
But I think Mardi Gras Murder is just, you have cool setting, you have a villain, and you have a lot of different ways you can go about it. I think that is I think you have the most to work with there.
It would be an excuse for them to use a lot of their Mardi Gras stuff that already exists. So it's an easy, put up in, 6 weeks type of house. Like it'd be built pretty quickly because they've already got a lot of the props that they need for it. It wouldn't take very long.
Correct. And going over those code names, the flower, the violet, it's right. The 3 colors of Mardi Gras. It's the purple, the green, and the yellow. So that's like a connection that I kind of drew from there. But I think that this is kind of, I think it's feasible. I know people were discussing it and they're like, well, maybe they'll veer away from it because of the tragedy on New Year's Eve down in New Orleans. But I really don't think that would affect it too much. Yeah. I don't think that, especially coming, and not to sound like insensitive, but I don't think that, obviously we talked earlier in the show about how 9/11 altered some of the event at 2001. That was a nationwide catastrophe. That was unprecedented. This is, while very, very sad, and I think it was more of a lower scale thing than such a national level. I don't think that would force them to pivot.
Yeah, well, the other thing too is that house was literally called Terror or something Terror or whatever. And they were talking about, that was a terrorist attack, and obviously this was also a terrorist attack as well. But I think that as long as they don't directly reference anything too specific, it wouldn't be necessarily taken the wrong way.
And at the end of the day, it's going to be the jester slasher.
Plus, remember too, 9/11 happened in September, so it was literally had just happened.
And they were
the fact that they even had an event at all, is surprising.
Yeah.
But by the time the event comes around this year, it'll have happened almost 8-9 months ago.
Yeah.
So
in the way the world works nowadays, news.
Unfortunately, the way the news cycle works is things are forgotten almost immediately.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate, but that is
which is
just
unfortunate.
kind of
But
the way it goes. It really is that quick of a news cycle.
right.
So I do think that I really do think we get something from Slaughter 2, and that's kind of the location spot that I wanted to put it.
And I'd be okay with Cyborgs too. I think Cyborgs would be a fun avenue to go down if they needed to pivot. But obviously, that's a little different. They'd have to build a whole bunch of props for it, even though the props would be epic.
Yeah,
I can imagine. But
that would give us a cool like sci-fi style thing.
Yeah.
We haven't really had anything super sci-fi in a little bit,
right?
But that is that location. I feel like we lined this up pretty good because I feel like we're getting fun stuff to talk about, because and the next one is sort of something you kind of got my wheels turning about.
Yeah, so this is another original idea that we came up with at Location H, and it's based on the Carnation. And we've been talking about it. So if you've listened to the last couple episodes, then you kind of know where we're going with this. But we're calling this house Hell's High Prom Night. But I definitely think of this as imagine the final scene in Carrie, or any horror movie that has to do with high school, and it always revolves around a big dance coming up or the prom coming up. So we're thinking either a prom night that is interrupted by demons, or potentially it is a high school of some sort of vampire, demon, zombie, something along those lines, and it's their prom night, and you're the invited guest, but only to be food or whatever, or you're the entertainment for their prom. But either way, I think the idea here is that we want to theme the house around prom night and something going wrong. And again, because of various horror movies that have revolved around that, it made a lot of sense. But with the flower carnation, which tends to be the corsage that is given to your date, you usually pin a corsage, you wear a corsage on your wrist. It's been a very long time since prom, so I don't really remember everything, but that's kind of how I remember it being. But it would be a pretty cool idea to explore. Again, something else where it's would it be too? Because unfortunately, because of the fires in LA, which are awful, and we hope anybody listening to us out there is safe. Yeah. But the Palisades High School that burned down was the one that they filmed Carrie at. So it's so now it's is this too soon? Is this too insensitive? So we made this before that we knew that happened. So this was definitely not a something that we were thinking about. But I like the idea of haunted school, or scary school, or scary kids, or whatever you want to say. But
and again, sort of digging into HHN history a little bit, we obviously chose the name Hell's High. That was a house at HHN 8 back way in the day, and it's really funny.
A long time ago.
Yeah, this was so the story was it was a school where a slasher movie was being filmed. And then the villain and the actors were possessed by several murderers and started killing anyone. But the villain of this house, I don't know how they got away with this stuff back then, but the villain's name was Michael Kruger. And he was a hybrid of Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger, but shared Michael's name.
It's so funny.
The stuff that they did back in the day is so you just wouldn't be able to get away with the copyright now.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it wasn't as widely advertised. People didn't really know what the hell it was, so it's no one thought about it. Now you could never get away with it. But
but I think it would be fun to. I figured if we were going to do some sort of prom theme house, it would be cool to connect it to something that we sort of have seen a lot of time ago. That would
make a lot of sense. Sorry, I mean to yawn, but yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
And it's sort of kind of in the wheelhouse of how we went back and retconned Oddfellow, right? We pulled Oddfellow from deep lore dusted him way the fuck off and threw him back
Mhm.
out there. You could do something similar in this, where like Hell's High, yeah, we're gonna revisit this setting, and it's gonna be completely different, but we're gonna keep the namesake because it prolongs the history.
Yeah, could put Cindy Kane in. Cindy Kane's in high school.
Yeah,
She's at her
right. There you
prom,
go.
and she goes crazy.
Yeah. So next up, this is where we sort of have, I don't want to say a second Slaughter, but this was an idea I wanted to have on last year's, and I didn't put it on there. And that would just be a Western original. I don't have any sort of name for it. I really just want to get back into, maybe not necessarily, I mean, Ghost Town is really what I want to see. I want to see either Hatchet and Chains or
Yeah.
going back to Ghost Town, which we haven't seen since 26. It was the Curse of Lightning Gulch, and this was a sequel to the house at 2004. So it's again going into HHN history and sort of brushing it off. But even if it's not Ghost Town, I do want to see some sort of Western, because I had so much fun in that Hatchet and Chains, and it would have been cool if I put it on last year, because I would have taken credit for Hatchet and Chains as well. But I do think that Western, much like we just mentioned, we haven't had sci-fi or something in that wheelhouse in a while. I think Western is a cool sandbox to play in that we haven't really
Yeah.
visited again in a while. So other than that, some of these other ones we've gone through, we've had sort of stories and reasonings. My reasoning for the next two is gut feeling.
Mm.
That's my reasoning, gut feeling. I
Yeah,
just feel
and
like
I
it's kind of
mean,
about time.
obviously, we're kind of just pulling these out of our ass. We're not really, we're not really. There isn't a whole lot of. I mean, there's thought put into it, but it's not like we don't know anything. So it's not like we've
No.
heard things from anybody or heard things from through the grapevine or anything like that. It's just ideas that we've come up with. I also would also like to see something Western based. I still would love to see like a vamp house done
Mm,
in the Western setting. Like we talked about it last year, the year before, like Vamp 85 and make it Vamp 1885 and have
yeah.
it just like a vampire version of Yellowstone or something along those lines. If not that, I would totally like to see some sort of like Western demon mashup. Like you
Yeah.
have like you have like cowboys versus aliens, but this time it's like cowboys versus demons,
Yeah. With
and
Hatchet
kind
and
of
Chase,
do
the
like
Demon Bounty Hunter.
exactly. I mean, kind of like we had in Slaughter Cinema, but not necessarily the same thing. It doesn't have to be those characters specifically, but I think that it just the Western setting isn't done enough. Like we don't do enough in that um, time period, and I think there's a lot of things we could do with that. Even if it's not like specifically what you would see in like a Western movie, but like maybe at the dawn of the revolution where the true Western was starting to die out and things are starting to industrialize and move west. So it's like the last of the cowboys are trying to either defend against some sort of demon horde or something stupid like that. But I would love to see that theming. I think there's a lot of things you could do with it. It's also a house that you could play with light a little bit more. Like it doesn't have to be necessarily just like dark.
Yeah,
It
you have
could
that
be,
dusk
yeah, like give
and
like
orange.
orangey dusk, like high noon, that type of
Yeah.
thing. We don't do enough. Yeah, like, and there's not enough horror done in daylight. I mean, there's definitely been a few movies that are like daylight horror, but there isn't a lot, and I think there needs to be more of that. And I think they could do something along those lines with a house. Obviously, not completely like lights on, but you know what I'm saying. Like kind of how they tried to do that a little bit with Legends Collide, and they had like at the end of
Yeah.
it, the sun was supposed to be rising over
Mm-hmm.
Egypt. Like same idea where you could kind of like do like the sun is setting, but like there's still that, like you said, orangey um, haze
Hue.
of the sun kind of going beyond the horizon. So there's a lot of things you could do with it, but I'd love to see that setting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think it's an untapped resource, and it's a matter of time. It's not if, it's when we get a Western back,
Yeah.
and I think it's been long enough. I think. Do you think there's any percentage of chance that they do Mardi Gras Murders and Hatchet and Chains as a house? Like, there's no chance that they do two, right?
Yeah, probably not. I would say no,
I'd go
but
2% chance.
I mean, if they so let's put it this way: if they're gonna do what we think they're gonna do and add an 11th house, maybe even a 12th house, how do you do that for the first year? You take things that you already know, take things you already have,
Mm-hmm.
and why wouldn't they be able to just say, "Hey, we're taking these two, scenes from Slaughter, and we're giving both of them their own house." I think both of those rooms were relatively, celebrated. I think a lot of people liked the Mardi Gras. People liked the Hatchet and Chains, and like you said, there isn't a whole lot of story with a lot of those scenes, but those two you could at least come up with something to fill a 10 or 11 room house. So I don't see why it wouldn't happen. I think if we knew for a fact that it was 10 houses again, probably not. But because the rumor of there potentially being an 11th or 12th house, I don't see why it wouldn't be out of the question, or
Yeah.
would be out of the question that we'd see both of those as a house.
Yeah. I especially if they're adding 12, like it would make sense to do these shortcut houses, which
Right.
say this map is like
Right.
100%,
Exactly.
right? If this map, it's not going to be, but just for, the sake of the argument, say this is 100%. I don't think anybody would be like, oh, well, Scary Tales and Nightingales and two Slaughter Cinema houses are back. That's stupid. Like, I think people would still be excited, even though there may not be all this completely brand new, fresh stuff. I think that they'd still be
Yeah,
excited.
I think
So,
so.
want to jump down to our second to last
Yeah,
house.
so this is our 10th house, which means we have an 11th on here. Our 10th house, location J, is we're bringing back the Greek mythos original. Um, like Nick was saying, I think that a few of
We had
these
this
or a
last
couple of
year.
these, we did have them on last year's map. We didn't get anything really kind of in that realm. I think that it is definitely an idea or a theme that we're going to see soon. So what it's going to entail, who knows? I would have to imagine that it bases somewhat around obviously Greek mythology, Greek polytheism, so Zeus and all the various gods, Hercules. It'll involve those characters in some those I shouldn't say characters. Sorry, those individuals in some way. Um, but who knows where it could go? Is it potentially going to be like a callback to Poseidon's Fury? Maybe. I know that was a joke we were making last year. It's like, oh, what if it's a Poseidon's Fury house because they're closing the ride, even though it's not really a ride, but
Experience.
could we see something along those lines? I think that'd be kind of funny for them to bring back like those characters from that Poseidon's Fury and do a house based around them. It's not like they haven't ever done a straight up just goofy, funny horror house, and this totally could be, if played with a little bit of levity and a little bit of wink, wink. We know what we're doing here. I think you could totally do that house and it be successful and be pretty fun. Um, can't say I'd be super pumped about that, but hey, I'd give it a chance.
But you could see it.
I could understand it. Yeah.
I think something with like either like a Hades or Medusa, like or something like in the gates of hell, like something like that,
Yeah, I mean,
like
you could
the
see it
gods
like
battling.
the Greek monsters have arrived and
Hmm.
like they have taken over, you know, Earth or whatever you call it. Um, and then obviously like Hercules has to fight back against all these monsters. I think that totally could work.
Hmm.
Um, so
Yeah, I again, much like Terrifier and sort of the Wizard of Oz, this will be the last time. I'll have a 2-year max on these stays on the map, so I won't put this on there next year, which means it will not happen this year, but it will come to 35 when I don't put it on the map. But last location, this one we did not talk about at all since our way too early guesses, and I had to throw it on there because I wanted to fill a spot with another kind of random shot in the dark, but I still am going to go down with my logic of 3 plus 4 equals 7. So we're going to get a revisit or some sort of house revolving around the 7 deadly sins. We've had this as a scare zone in the past, and I just think I think the name, or I think the numbers of the event actually play into this a little bit. I think this would be sort of in that world of sort of how Dark Zodiac was, but in a house format. Maybe each room is one of the seven deadly sins.
Yep.
I could see it kind of translating, and this was a scare zone at 21, I think it was, and it was sort of the same thing. You had these grotesque creatures that sort of represented the different sins, whether that's gluttony or greed or wrath or something like that. But I do think it just made too much sense for me to not include it with the year being 34. Is that something that they look that deep into? Probably not. But I those are the weird little connections that I always sort of look for.
Yeah.
Again, that was the one that sort of, other than like the last two, the Western and Greek, those were like kind of gut feeling. Seven is more less in my gut that it's going to happen, but more like, wow, it would be really cool if they used that connection and sort of like uh, not embellished, but like dove into the whole 3+4 thing. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's any chance on seven, or is it just my weird brain?
No, I mean, they've done it before.
Yeah,
I don't really see how it connects yet, but I
yeah.
understand the 3+4 = 7. I could see that
So
being,
stupid. I'm such an idiot.
no, but hey, I mean, Christ, the way people try to connect the dots is nothing new. So yeah, I don't think it's impossible that we see something in relation to the seven deadly sins. I don't know why we haven't seen it since the last time they did do it. I think that it's an interesting idea to tackle. Um, I'm trying to think, is Dante's Hell 7 rings or 9 rings? I'd have to look that up. But you know, if it's 7, which I think it might be 7, but if you saw something like that, where instead of like being specifically the seven deadly sins, like you based it around Dante's Inferno and you did like the 7 layers of hell,
It is
I
the
think that would.
seven
Is it the
rings.
7? Okay, so it is 7. I think that would be really cool, and I think that's because it's based around the seven deadly sins. I think it's all kind of ties into each other, but
They are very similar. Yeah.
that'd be kind of cool to like be a traveler, like with Dante as he travels through the seven levels of hell.
Mm-hmm.
That would be sick. I think that'd be really, really cool and a different take on the 7 idea. But yeah, I don't think it's wild to think that. I mean, it'd be better if it was happening in 2027 instead of 2025. Um, but yeah, I don't see why it's in. But I think 5+2 is 7 too. So I mean, like,
Yeah.
you're not crazy. I mean, I
Could have
don't
done it
think
a
it's
year, pretty much.
yeah. I don't think it's wild to think that.
Could have done it at 25.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so those are our 11 that we put on their map. So for our 12th location, this isn't, you're not going to see it on the map, but this is kind of like our Hail Mary. So what was the thing you were referencing at the top?
Well, I mean, this isn't really a Hail Mary. We don't have a Monsters House on here.
So I just don't, so in my mind, I know it's also sort of rumored that there isn't going to be one this year, but in my mind, I think Universal is going to say, if you want to see the monsters, you have to
go to Epic. Yeah, I don't know. That's actually a really good question because I'm not convinced that they would do that to their fans. I feel like that a lot of people would be, if that's their reasoning. So, for example, let's just say they don't do one. Well, shit, they don't do one. But if they don't do one, and they say reason we're not doing one is because we have a whole new land in Epic, I think that's gonna piss some people off. Don't you?
I think it would, but I don't think they'd ever come out and say it.
Right, and that's fine. That's my point. Like if they don't say it, like if it's just, hey, we're not doing a Monsters House this year, okay, that's fine. But if they put out into the out there that the reason we're not doing a Monsters House is because we have a new theme park with a whole monsters area you can go visit, people are like, well, that's fine. Like, yeah, great. There's a whole extra theme park, but maybe I'm not planning on going to Epic yet. I don't want to do Epic yet. I don't want to pay the money for Epic yet. I think that would be ballsy for them to do that. Now, granted, I totally understand that there's talks that they're not going to have a house I'd be surprised if there isn't a Monsters house, because
One
they've
of my
kind of
other,
been.
it's consistent.
Yeah, I mean, it's been consistently there for the last what, 5 years at this point. So
Yeah.
every year since 19, there's been a
Yeah.
Monsters house in some capacity. So to not have Monsters at all would surprise me. But
Now,
I understand that reasoning though. That
one of my other thoughts was maybe as a scare zone, you would have all the monsters that are at Epic pretty much as
yeah,
a come see us over there. Like, because they all do have much different designs than we've seen. You know, the houses are sort of more classic, and these
mm-hmm.
ones are more zhuzhed up. Like Dracula's got this crazy like winged cape out and like full
Mm-hmm.
cape. Like they look different. So I would be I'm almost half expecting a Universal Monsters scare zone of all of the epic versions as
Yeah,
sort of a walking billboard to come see us.
yeah.
Um, so if you don't have a Hail Mary yet,
I don't.
okay. So I'll give you mine, and if it gives you enough time to think about one, cool. If not, whatever. But my last Hail Mary is: what if they look down the street and fire a direct shot at Hollow Scream Orlando and do some sort of pirate based themed house, because they do a lot of like they've done pirate based houses at Hollow Scream before, and
Mm-hmm.
they're the icons over there are like sirens, and they do very obviously with SeaWorld they do it very nautically kind of based stuff. I'd be
Yep.
curious if they've done, because I don't think we've, maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember a pirates based house at Horror Nights in at least in recent history. I'm sure there was one that I'm
Right.
missing, but off the top of my head, I don't necessarily remember a full on pirate based one. Obviously, Dead Man's Pier is kind of in that wheelhouse, but those are fishermen and not pirates. I know it can almost kind of be a little jokey, which is, now that I'm thinking about it, a little bit surprised there wasn't some sort of pirate thing in Slaughter Cinema, because that would have felt like very jokey but fun. So that's my last shot. That's my shot in the dark for the 12th house, is like some sort of pirate based house. Do you have anything like IP related or anything
I
or
was
original?
thinking. I mean, again, I don't know how it exactly ties into like the flower theming of the code names, but like a Sweeney Todd or something in that
Okay.
wheelhouse,
Yep.
because obviously that it's a little bit. Again, I don't know how to tie it in um, to flowers in any way, but
And usually we do this map before code names, so like
yeah.
we usually don't have any real reasonings or tie-ins other than like, oh well, I think this was going to happen.
I mean, I wish it wasn't a Disney thing, but like, I'd love to see their take on a Beauty and the Beast
Yeah, I mean,
horror. Because I
scary
think
tales,
like
right? Can
with
you
the
add
magic
that?
rose and stuff, like I think that would work. It would fit really well. But obviously, it's a Disney movie, so
Yeah, it's a little
even
bit
though
more,
it's a classic fairy tale.
right? Well, that is our guest map for HHN34. Before we sign off, we got two voicemails. These are a little bit longer, so if it cuts off, I do apologize. Sometimes my phone will not play like the full length. We try to keep these a little bit shorter, but sometimes people get excited. So let's get into this. See if I can cue this up.
Yeah, sorry about earlier. So, and originals. So the houses that I would like to see that will work for HHN is The Last of Us Part 2. And I know it's rumored right now, but, oh, and fun fact, I actually talked about this before it was rumored. And, yep, so hopefully it's true. And the other one, I think Alien will be cool. And I know Alien is owned by Disney because Disney owns Fox. But it would be cool though. And since the new TV show is coming out, so yeah. And they could use xenomorphs as puppets, just like they did in The Quiet Place. And oh, I Am Legend will be cool.
Yeah, Alien would be pretty cool. I again, I don't think that played the whole message, but it's sort of got the gist. The Last of Us is sort of rumored. And Alien would be really cool. They had AVP at 24, so obviously
Yeah.
before the merger. But
don't tease me with a good time. I'd love to.
right?
I would love to do like a Nostromo house, just like going through the Nostromo and getting attacked by xenomorphs. Like that would be one of my dreams. If I can't get another Thing house at some point or another The Shining house, I would love to see Alien.
Also, that brings up something I did miss when we were talking about The Conjuring, and I kind of referred to that sort of as like my white whale.
Mm-hmm.
I do think like if it's not Conjuring, like I think we're gonna get one of those crazy things, whether it's Shining, The Thing, because they've never done an original The Thing.
Oh, true.
I think we get like one of those or like an It, like maybe not It. It's a little bit. I don't know if it's tougher or not.
Yeah, I
With
don't
the
know
new
if it, I don't
with
think.
the new series coming out, it might not be super off the table. They got the new prequel series, Welcome to Derry, coming out. But I think that Conjuring location, if it's not Conjuring, it's like one of those big IPs that they haven't been able to obtain,
Right.
in recent years. So let's get to our last voicemail. And again, if it cuts off, I'm sorry, but my phone is also on like 8% battery.
Hey there, this is Scott. On social, you probably know me as HHN Scott. I've got a couple of hot takes for this year, and first I'll just say I'm going to call it, well, I think a lot of people have called it, but 12 houses, but everybody says where. The obvious one is Soundstage 24A, since the E was listed, but I'm going to say the next soundstage they use is Soundstage 18. It has been used before. Blue Man isn't using it. It's got easy access with Rocket closed to be able to use that area for queue and for access because the ride will be running during Horror Nights. So they can absolutely get over there, or 17 or 19 are right behind it. Any of those will have a queue area with Rocket closed and access. So I believe that's going to be the 12th house. The house idea that I think will happen this year involves two ideas from Slaughter Cinema. So I think they're going to do a version of Holiday's House. Starting off with the Mardi Gras murders scene from Slaughter Cinema. I think they could throw some other ideas in there. Have a scary leprechaun from St. Patrick's Day, a creeped out Easter bunny, maybe a fireworks injured individual from Independence Day, something with Thanksgiving, and end it with the Slaughter Cinema event as well, the Killer Kringles. You got two items from Slaughter Cinema, and you get a Holiday's House, and I think a lot of people are wanting something holiday related, Christmas related, and that will help with that. One last thing I just wanted to call out, anybody that read the book that Earl put out for Christmas this year, towards the end, it seems like we might see an Earl visit Mardi Gras and or Halloween Horror Nights, as he has a mask for Mardi Gras and a little pumpkin. Will that be a house? Will that be a zone? Or will that just be Earl, maybe the zombie version, making appearances somewhere? I was curious from the book, but it's got possibilities and potential. Thanks, guys, that listen to the show. Love it. Hope to see you in the fog, and look forward to drinking some beers with you. Bye.
Hell yeah, Scott. Those are some good, and it's funny too. That's why I always like playing these after, to see if people call in and talk about stuff that we also talked about. We're right on the same wavelength for Mardi Gras murders. Last year we had the holidays in holidays in hell on the map for last year. So I'd obviously be down. I love the Christmas horror. I've been waiting for it. Krampus is probably it's in my tops for IPs overall, I'd say. And I just don't think the Christmas time gets enough love. If it comes, I will not be upset one bit. But those were our call-ins for this week. So any last info on this guest map before we sign off? Do you think, if you had to put a number on it, how many do you think we'll get on this one, if any?
2.
We're gonna ride the 2 train.
Yeah, I'll put 2. I think, and it's boring. It's there you go. Yeah, 2. I think we're gonna get at least 2 right, or at least close.
I think 4.
Ooh.
I feel good about this map. I feel real good about. I feel good about them every time I make. I felt good about last year's too, but I had a lot right last year, and if a lot of it bleeds into this year, then we're on a good streak. I think 4. I could see 4. I'm excited to now. Like, this makes me more excited for announcements, Not even for HHN, but just for like to see where I'm at. I love that stuff. But well, that is all. We did tease on our social media. We got something spooky coming in June. And maybe we'll fill you in on that next week. We got to do something next week, so we'll figure it out once we get there. Follow us on all of our socials, but on YouTube in particular, we're trying to build up our subscribers over there. So go over to YouTube and follow us if you don't mind. We are continuing our Shudder Sundays this Sunday. We are, for the month of January, taking one last look back at the year of 2024 and all of what Shudder had to offer by visiting the 4, not best, but some of the highest rated Shudder releases. And this week we are going to be going into In a Violent Nature.
Ooh.
Now, me and Jamie
famously not liked.
But Seamus, do you have any input? Because we saw this movie together. So do you have any input on In Violent Nature?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to spoil your review or anything like that, but
this is yours, so you don't know. Maybe we think something different.
I don't think it was as bad as people have said. I think that it's definitely a unique watch. It's not for everybody. It's not your typical slasher, but the problem with it is that some of it just drags on for too long. And yeah, I don't know. I think I would have been okay with it if it had done primarily what it did in the first part of the movie, but didn't take so long. Like, we don't need to follow the killer for 45 minutes for it to be different. But I would not be one I'd go back to. And I've heard that they're making a second one. Like, I've heard there's like In the Violent Nature 2 is coming out, which is insane to me that it made enough money for them to warrant greenlighting a second one. But I mean, I guess people will see anything these days, but it's not a good movie. It's not bad, but it's not good. It's not like some groundbreaking take on a modern day slasher. It's not at all. I think there was a lot more ways they could have gone with it, but they just didn't do what I thought they were going to do with it.
Yeah. Well, if you want to hear me and Jamie's thoughts on In a Violent Nature, tune in on Sunday on our podcast feed, or if you want to watch us talk about it, because on the YouTube, when you watch it, I do add some different little clips from the movies and kind of overlay it a little bit so you can see what we're talking about as well. So head over to YouTube, find us on there, hit the little bell, subscribe, like, all that crazy stuff. But until next time, this is Nick.
And this is Seamus.
Happy haunts.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Fear and Beer, a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on whatever streaming platform you are listening to us on. You can find us on all of our socials at Fear and Beer Pod.